and all of the agencies involved will continue to dismantle.
Tonight, the Department of Homeland Security is sharing new pictures and details following this weekend's arrest of more than 100.
He was still asleep when the first battering ram strikes echoed across the border. Just before dawn, coordinated FBI raids in Texas and California shattered the silence. Federal agents moved not on cartel smugglers, but on their own border officers. The hit was precise and unprecedented. 89 personnel were handcuffed for collaborating with a Venezuelan cartel. What looked like a routine inspection turned into the loudest internal purge of the decade. The investigation led agents straight into the heart of the southern drug pipeline, the Texas-California corridor, where border crossings had long served as gateways for cartel flows. And it was here, in sectors that should have been the most secure, that a years-long operation unfolded, now considered one of the largest internal betrayals in the agency's history. According to investigators, the conspiracy lasted more than 6 years. Through controlled patrol shift corridors, over $2.1 billion worth of shipments passed, from fentanyl press equipment to heroin loads that slipped effortlessly between Texas, Arizona, and deeper into California. The raids swept across multiple border cities, warehouses, private homes, and official inspection points, a network protected by the very people sworn to stop it. In scale, it became the largest strike on cartel channels in the U.S. South in more than a decade, an operation that exposed just how deeply criminal structures had grown into the border infrastructure. The beginning of the case looked almost accidental, but in reality it was the result of one man's desperate courage. The investigation was triggered by an honest officer who spent more than a year collecting proof of internal corruption, recorded calls, copies of altered inspection logs, photos of nighttime special passages with no checks. He worked in secrecy, used disposable phones, and passed information through encrypted channels. The reason was simple and deadly. He knew the Venezuelan network his colleagues were dealing with eliminated anyone who threatened their operations. The first packet of evidence reached the FBI through an internal whistleblower channel. After reviewing the files, agents immediately understood this wasn't minor corruption. It was a systemic partnership with a cartel. Within weeks, an interagency task force was formed: FBI, DEA, and HSI. They began constructing what would later be described as one of the most complex operational profiles in recent years. The first phase, covert surveillance. For months, investigators tracked shifting patrol routes, synchronized windows in border rotations, and the appearance of the same trucks moving through crossings that, on paper, carried construction materials, but according to the whistleblower, were loaded with narcotics. Then came the technical tools. Camera arrays with thermal imaging were deployed along the border, and several employees suspected of cartel ties were placed under court-authorized wiretap. The wiretaps revealed the first layer of the scheme. The officers weren't merely looking the other way. They were actively coordinating routes with cartel couriers. Their phones were full of coded messages. Window open in 14. Cargo cleared, 23 min. Night passage paid. Agents quickly saw that the entire operation functioned like a corporate structure, with supervisors, schedules, and penalties for errors. The second layer emerged through undercover purchases organized via intermediary dealers. Some of the seized batches were delivered through the exact border sectors handled by the corrupt officers. The products, fentanyl pills, heroin, and cocaine, carried identical markings, pointing to a unified supply channel. Meanwhile, agents began following the money trail. Officially, the officers earned standard salaries, but over 6 years, several of them acquired homes, vehicles, and investments they couldn't possibly justify. Through the FBI's Financial Intelligence Unit, investigators uncovered a cryptocurrency payment chain. The cartel sent funds to anonymous wallets belonging not to the officers themselves, but to their trusted persons, relatives, or acquaintances registered as owners of small LLCs. These shell companies, from auto repair shops to fake transport firms, became the bridge for laundering the payouts. The money passed through crypto wallets, dissolved into fabricated services, and eventually returned to the corrupt employees as dividends, loans, or investment returns. A separate part of the investigation focused on falsified documents. Wiretaps revealed that officers used fake inspection records, altered timestamps, and inserted false data into the electronic system. Some cargo crossings didn't match their logs at all. A truck passed at 02:17, while the system listed 03:42, with a completely different officer supposedly performing the check. The investigators worked quietly and patiently for nearly a year and a half. They couldn't risk a single premature move. Any leak could cost the whistleblower his life. The trigger came when a shipment registered as medical reagents entered the customs database, but in reality contained pill press molds and component kits for fentanyl production. Its data aligned perfectly with the internal communications of the corrupt officers, confirming what agents feared. They weren't just enabling smuggling, they were ensuring the transit of critical materials for the cartel's laboratories. Once the FBI received verified evidence of large-scale corruption from the whistleblower, the Bureau authorized the riskiest phase of the investigation, Operation Broken Shield, under which an undercover agent was officially hired into the Border Patrol. His cover story, a new transfer from an internal division after completing a fast-track training program. In reality, he had a nearly impossible mission to infiltrate the section of the system already controlled by the cartel and avoid being exposed. For the first weeks, the agent played the role of a silent rookie, observing how the corruption engine operated. Using a concealed service camera, he recorded senior officers correcting entry logs, signing off for absent colleagues, and altering timestamps for truck passages. Several times he witnessed cartel couriers pull up to the gates with blacked-out windows, hand off packages through side doors, and exit without a single scan. Gradually, the agent moved closer to the core. The officers who maintained direct contact with Venezuelan handlers. Meetings took place in closed garages or abandoned lots. Under cover of night, money changed hands, bundles of cash in heat-sealed packs, crypto codes scribbled on slips of paper, USB sticks with preloaded wallets. The agent recorded everything: audio, video, geolocation, how the scheme operated. At the heart of the operation was a multi-layered criminal ecosystem tied to several revenue streams. 1. Drug trafficking. Venezuelan and Colombian partners supplied large shipments of fentanyl, heroin, and cocaine through Mexico. At the border, assigned officers ensured protected windows for truck passages. Some of the product was mixed inside mobile labs already on U.S. soil, underground workshops hidden in warehouse containers rented under shell companies. Each truck passed without inspection carried the potential for hundreds of thousands of lethal fentanyl doses. This alone made the scheme one of the most dangerous in modern border history. 2. Weapons moving in the opposite direction were weapon shipments, from semi-automatic rifles to illegal conversion modules that turned civilian firearms into military-grade weapons. Some components were sourced from military depots via proxy procurement. The cartel paid extra for every delivery, as the weapons were used for internal conflicts and to protect drug labs. 3. Human smuggling and covert sheltering. A separate channel handled illegal migration logistics. Corrupt officers maintained several black routes, allowing groups to cross without registration. Some migrants ended up in labor slavery, farms, workshops, debt traps. The cartel profited twice, first from the crossing, then from exploitation through intermediaries. 4. Financing and money laundering. Money moved primarily through cryptocurrency. Payments were split into dozens of microtransactions, routed through Asian exchanges, and eventually landed in wallets belonging to front LLCs. From there, funds were funneled into real estate, vehicles, and investments in small border area businesses, car washes, storage units, repair shops, creating the illusion of legitimate income and masking payouts to CBP personnel. 5. Technological smuggling. A surprising branch involved smuggling tech equipment, microchips, sensors, communication components. Some were sent to South America, others supplied cartel labs, where they were used for secure communication, encryption, and movement tracking. Corruption at the border allowed transport of hardware normally restricted under export controls. At the center of the entire corruption network stood the station commander, a man with a spotless public reputation and years of unchecked power in the shadows. He was the architect of a system that operated with almost no failures. He controlled shift schedules, placed reliable officers at key checkpoints, and personally approved the windows for cartel shipments to pass through. According to FBI findings, the commander received hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash every month from the Venezuelan cartel. payment for guaranteeing that not a single load would be inspected. Once the undercover agent gathered the critical evidence, the case shifted into its most delicate phase, operational preparation. The FBI, DEA, HSI, and local police formed a unified coordination center. For several weeks, operator teams rehearsed every scenario: simultaneous seizure of the station, arresting the command staff, intercepting cartel couriers, and blocking all possible escape routes. Using aerial imagery and internal building layouts, they created a detailed assault blueprint. Entry routes, clean zones, rooms where evidence could be destroyed, server storage areas, and the commander's private safes. A separate team was assigned to officers who were off duty, traveling, or on leave. They all had to be taken down at the exact same moment to prevent any leak of information. The timing of the operation was not accidental. The cartel was scheduled to deliver the commander's next cash payment for an incoming shipment. According to intercepted communications, the load was expected that very night. That meant the building would contain the key players, the documents, the phones, and the money. At the same time, agents learned the commander suspected a leak and was considering fleeing to Mexico. Any delay could wipe out 18 months of work. The decision was clear: strike at dawn while the scheme was still active and every target was within reach. The operation needed to be fast, complete, and leave no room for escape for those who had spent years turning the border into a private profit corridor for the cartel. The operation didn't end with arrests alone. It opened a vast archive of corruption the station commander and his officers had been building for years. During the searches, agents seized tons of physical and digital evidence that mapped out the criminal ecosystem in detail. First came the narcotics. Inside storage bays, service garages, and even personal lockers, investigators found more than 120 kilograms of fentanyl mixtures, along with dozens of kilograms of heroin and cocaine. According to DEA estimates, this was enough to produce millions of lethal doses. Part of the product had already been packaged for the domestic market, hidden in containers labeled as construction materials. Next was the weapons cache. From concealed compartments, agents recovered 27 firearms, AR platform rifles, short carbines, pistols with serial numbers burned off with acid, and several conversion modules capable of turning civilian weapons into automatic ones. From the station commander and 2 senior officers, investigators confiscated cash safes containing over $840,000, much of it in crisp, newly issued bills. In addition, agents gained access to crypto wallets with a combined flow of more than 2.7 million. Among the documents were dozens of forged passes, altered inspection logs, falsified night shift reports, and clean check forms. On the station's servers, kept in a restricted room, agents discovered audio recordings of bribery discussions, internal coded communications, and body camera footage showing officers deliberately opening lanes for vehicles marked with cartel identifiers. The technical evidence was just as revealing. Encrypted radios, burner phones, laptops running log erasing software, and external servers loaded with financial spreadsheets and payout schemes. And finally, the people. In 2 cartel-controlled houses near the border, agents found 9 migrants held for transport or labor exploitation. Several couriers were detained as well, drivers involved in nighttime crossings, along with coordinators responsible for transferring money to corrupt officers. Taken together, the evidence proved beyond doubt that the station wasn't simply compromised. It had been operating for years as a functioning branch of the cartel, embedded inside a federal institution. The dawn raids delivered a blow the cartel never anticipated. All 89 suspects were arrested within hours, with no chance to flee or destroy evidence. In the homes of the involved officers, agents found millions in cash, detailed maps of underground routes and tunnels, backup phones for communication with Venezuelan handlers, and handwritten ledgers tracking profit distribution. Analysis of the seized materials allowed investigators to understand exactly why the scheme had endured for so long. It relied on fear, secrecy, and the commander's hierarchy of loyalty, rewards, and intimidation. The cartel received a guaranteed border, while the officers enjoyed money and the illusion of absolute impunity. FBI officials summarized it bluntly. This wasn't corruption. This was a parallel cartel infrastructure operating inside a government agency. We cut its spine. The DEA added that the operation rivaled the largest federal strikes against transnational networks in the past 2 decades, but that no previous case reached this level of penetration into an official structure. In the end, it was the combination of factors: the whistleblower, the undercover infiltration, the wiretaps, the financial tracing, and the synchronized raids that dismantled what once seemed untouchable. As one agent put it, the scheme was dangerous because it gave the cartel control over the country's front gate, but it collapsed the moment we broke it from the inside. In response, U.S. authorities announced sweeping reforms of border agencies, enhanced personnel vetting, a full audit of internal systems, and expanded protections for whistleblowers. The Attorney General stated, "No cartel, not even one from Venezuela, will ever be allowed to buy the American border."